Hello everybody, Andrew Cuneo here. Today I'm going to be playing in an Arena Qualifier play-in. So this is, in order to get into the main Arena Qualifier, I'll have to go 4-0 in a best-of-3 tournament. This is the deck I've chosen to play. It's a deck I made myself. It's a blue-black control deck. How I wound up here is I tried a variety of different decks in Explorer. I tried like Blue-Red Creativity. I didn't try the version with Atraxa that's kind of caught on. I tried the Locust God combo version, which I wasn't very impressed by. The Atraxa version's better. I tried a little bit of Cat Oven Mayhem Devil decks. I tried some, various creature beatdown, white decks, whether it be spirits or humans. I also tried Blue-White Control. I didn't really particularly like any of those decks. And I was actually thinking that I might actually want to just play Torrential Gearhulk. I used to do this a lot in Historic when the card pool was a lot smaller. And I always liked that. So this is kind of a callback to that. But interestingly, this deck has two cards that were banned in Standard when they were legal that nobody really plays in Explorer, which is Divide by Zero and the Meathook Massacre. I actually, for a while, I forgot the Meathook Massacre existed, and I was about to give up on this deck because I just wasn't happy with the other sweeper options. And then I eventually remembered, oh yeah, you're actually allowed to play with an unnerfed version of the Meathook Massacre in Explorer. And a long time ago, when Divide by Zero and Meathook Massacre were both legal, and I'm going to say maybe like the first iteration of Alchemy, or maybe it was in Standard still, I played with these two in the deck together, and being able to bounce your sweeper and recast it is really nice some of the time. So that's a big part of the appeal for this deck. The other reason that I didn't like blue-white was I think that this is a format where you actually want to have one-mana creature interaction. I was trying the version of blue-white where you try to cheat Lotus Field into play with whatever the 1/3 guy's name is. I'm blanking on the name. It's a 1/3 that allows you to cheat Lotus Field into play, and it stops coming to play abilities, and that makes it so Portable Hole doesn't work very well in your deck. So I wanted to play Fatal Push. I was also impressed by Sheoldred's Edict out of some of the black decks. That seems like a good removal spell. So that was the appeal of black. Also, I just think Cling to Dust is a great card in older formats. I'm really happy with the first copy in almost any black deck, and even the second copy I'm pretty happy with. Most people don't play it in like the red-black mid-range decks. I actually think that's maybe a bit of a mistake. I think one copy is pretty nice to have. Then I've got Censors in my deck. I don't really like playing 3-mana hard counters in older formats. Divide by Zero is a little bit different because it can deal with things in play, and it's not a permanent counter, but you can use it in a counter war. There are tricky things you can do with it, targeting your own spells. Divide by Zero is a card that doesn't look particularly good, but there's actually a lot of play to it. I've got one Negate in my main deck as a hard counter. I've also got two Drowned in the Lochs. This is a really tricky card because this deck doesn't do a ton to enable it, but in games where you actually want this to counter spells, it's going to eventually become a counter, so it's kind of a 2-mana counter. It also gives you a little bit more single-target creature removal. It's a very good target with Torrential Gearhulk once the game gets to the point where you're casting Torrential Gearhulk. So I've been reasonably impressed by it. There are matchups. I think you want to board it out if your opponent's going to be doing things that actively prevent it from working, like they have Crocs in their deck and they're going to be escaping it. Or if you get to a game 3 and you know that your opponent's going to have a lot of rest in pieces in their deck, I would take it out of your deck at that point. I even have one Jwari Disruption in my deck, and this is just because I wanted to play more lands. I think I've got 26 plus a Jwari Disruption. And then I've got 4 Censors that cycle. I've got some Hieroglyphic Illuminations that cycle, and Cling to Dusts. So it's kind of like 27 lands, plus you're making your land drops a lot. I have 2 Narsets in my deck, which I wanted to play some sort of Planeswalker that gets me ahead. Narset is also a really important card when you play against a blue-white control deck, because if you get Narset in play, it's much less threatening to allow them to resolve a Teferi. Also, when you play against the blue-white decks, if you don't have a card like Narset in your deck, you don't really have anything that just punishes them for just kind of repeatedly tapping out against you. There's nothing that you can resolve if they give you a window that is actually problematic for them, so you want Narset. Also, Narset is kind of nice against people who are playing with Fable of the Mirror Breaker and in the Atraxa deck's Big Score, because if it's sitting in play, it's pretty annoying for them, especially because you can, if they resolve a Fable of the Mirror Breaker and then you immediately cast the Narset, you know that they're going to miss out on the second chapter of Fable of the Mirror Breaker, which is where a lot of the power comes in older formats. So pretty happy with Narset. In the 4-mana slot, I wanted some card drawing. Once you're going to play a Torrential Gearhulk deck, the card drawing that you want to play with is a little bit dictated. Like, you don't want to play Memory Deluge with Torrential Gearhulk because it doesn't work. I'm playing 2 Behold the Multiverses because it's the more powerful thing to actually cast, and 2 Hieroglyphic Illuminations. I like the being able to cycle it. Just cycling this so that you know that once you get to 6 mana, you're going to have something that's worth flashing back in your graveyard for Torrential Gearhulk is nice. I wouldn't want to play 4 Behold the Multiverses. It's a little bit too clunky. Only 1 Sublime Epiphany. This is kind of like how you put the nail in the coffin of a game, is if you have a turn where you get to Gearhulk, flashback a Sublime Epiphany, make a new Gearhulk, flashback something else. That's where you kind of just, you know, you usually your opponent concedes if you get to the point where you've done that. It's a little bit too many 6-mana cards. I found I was playing with 2 Sublime Epiphanies and 4 Gearhulks for a while. Looking at the lands, there's nothing too surprising here. I guess there's a couple of things that stand out. I do have Hall of Storm Giants in my deck, which is just, you know, any blue control deck, you're going to want to play that. It's very good. I have an Otawara and a Takenuma. Takenuma's kind of nice. Getting back Torrential Gearhulks and Narsets, those are like really juicy targets for it. I'm not playing the blue castle. Instead, I'm playing the black castle. I think the black castle is just a more powerful card. And the matchups where you actually want to spend mana on your castles, a lot of the times it's against like a black-red deck that makes you discard a lot. There, I think you're happier to be activating the black castle than you would be the blue castle, because you know, you just want more cards, and your hand's going to be pretty empty most of the time in that matchup. So, you know, you're not going to be paying a ton of life to get more cards. And then also against blue-white control, where your life total doesn't matter a ton, so you can, you know, you can comfortably get a card or 2 off of this over the course of the game. And if you actually wind up trading a bunch with them, you know, you fight a bunch of counter wars and the game gets back to neutral, you can actually use this a lot. Also, same thing if you play against like an Indomitable Creativity deck where your life total doesn't really matter a ton. So you can pretty comfortably use this. The main reason I think that the black castle is better than the blue castle against black-red mid-range. That's why I have the black castle, but it is also useful in other matchups. I've got 2 Field of Ruins and a Demolition Field, which is the same card. I just split them 2 and 1 because, I don't know, it makes people have to think about how many of those do you really have in your deck, or they can't. I don't know if, like, I think Phyrexian Revoker works against them. Not that people really play that card. There's really no reason not to split them. This is in my deck both to be able to answer, you know, somewhat problematic lands, like creature lands. It's nice to have cards that can blow them up, like opposing Hall of Storm Giants. Also, it works as an enabler for Fatal Push if you want to hit 3 and 4 mana cards. I think it's very important if you're going to be playing with Fatal Push that you put some cards in your deck that can enable it. Getting Revolt, so I'm getting that from my lands. Also, when you play with Narset, a lot of the time your opponents are going to wind up attacking the Narset, killing it, and then your Fatal Push gets turned on. You can also divide by 0 like your Meathook Massacre and turn on Fatal Push. That's why I also have 1 Fabled Passage in my deck, is primarily to enable Fatal Push. It's also it's a minor thing, but you know, having a Fabled Passage go to the yard makes it easier to escape Cling to Dust. I wouldn't play a ton of these. Like, I'm only playing one, and I'm only playing 4 basics. That is one thing that's very important to note about the mana base in this deck. When we get to the lessons in the sideboard, there is an environmental sciences, which most games you're probably going to eventually environmental sciences for a basic. So you can actually run out of basics. You want to pay careful attention to how many basics you've gotten out of your deck to know whether or not you're going to be able to get a land off your Fabled Passage, whether or not you're going to get a land from Field of Ruin. Another really important point here is that you want to have a swamp left in your deck in order to be able to do the Field of Ruin, get a swamp, fatal push play. Like, if you're going to have extra mana and you have black mana, it's not important to be able to get a swamp, but sometimes you're going to be tight on mana, and you need specifically for your Field of Ruin to be able to go and get a swamp so that you can fatal push something. So I would, in general, when you're using Field of Ruin, or when you're searching for a basic land, you want to prefer to leave one swamp in your deck unless you really need the black mana. It's a minor thing, but it can come up and it can lose your game, so it's I think important to note. Going through the sideboard, so if you played with Divide by Zero when it was legal in Standard, there were 3 standard lessons every deck played. Mascot Exhibition, which is a way to end the game. It's way worse in Explorer than it was in Standard, just because it's pretty expensive for the format, and a lot of decks do actually play sweepers, or a lot of decks are just going to have like fatal pushes in their deck game 1, which don't do anything. And if you wind up casting Mascot Exhibition, they're going to fatal push 2/3 of it with cards that were completely useless. So it is not nearly as powerful as it was in Standard, but I think it's still worth playing. You still do sometimes get it, and it still occasionally wins you the game. It's only costing you 1 sideboard slot, which, if we learned anything from Companions, 1 sideboard slot is like not a very high card cost to play for cards that you're just going to be tutoring for from your sideboard effectively. Because really, I mean, if it wins you the game like 1 game out of 100, it's worth it. And I think it wins you the game far more often than that. Other cards that were standard lessons, Teachings of the Archaics. People's curves are a little bit lower in Explorer than they were in Standard, so it's harder to make this work as a divination. It's really hard to make it work as a draw 3, but it's still definitely worth it. Especially in games where you get to be on the play, you'll be able to divide by 0 into Teachings of the Archaics pretty reliably. On the draw, you do need to be careful if you're picking this, because you might never be able to cast it. Environmental Sciences, this is just if you need a land, if you want to gain some life, it's a good option to have. Then we get to the one Explorer-specific option that people didn't really play in Standard because they weren't playing Divide by 0 in black decks that much, or Planeswalkers weren't that prevalent. Confront the Past is a really important one to be able to get. There are decks that are going to play Planeswalkers. Sometimes you'll kill your opponent's Planeswalker with a card you got off of Divide by 0. More importantly, you can get this card and use it to get back Narset, which is just a ton of value. Like, if you play Divide by 0 in some relevant way, you get Confront the Past, and you're essentially up 1 Narset, and then, the Narset goes and finds you more spells. That is a really important interaction to have access to. So those are the 4 cards you can get with Divide by 0. As the game goes on, you're probably eventually, in a really long game, you're going to get all 4 of them, and one of them might not be useful. Just remember, you can also use this card to loot. So cards you actually are going to be boarding in. I've got 1 cut down. This is just an additional cheap removal spell. Especially, I played against spirits a lot on the ladder, and just having more 1-mana removal is really great in that matchup. Also, 1 Rave Enfeeblement. This is a card that honestly you can board in against spirits, especially if they're playing Spell Queller. You would obviously board it in. But it also hits a lot of the blue spirits, just -1/-1. So that's a good card there. Also, you can hit bigger white creatures. This is an important card to board in against Greasefang decks. Some Thoughtseize. These are mostly to board in, they're to board in against like combo decks and control decks. So I consider Greasefang a combo deck, so I board it in there, but also, against blue-white control, you're obviously going to board it in. Against an Indomitable Creativity deck, you're also going to board it in. 2 of those. 1 Mystical Dispute. This is just to have another counter. It's good against spirits decks. It's good against, if you play against like a Merfolk deck somehow, but it's also good against like blue-white control type decks. Negate, also obviously against control decks and combo decks. One Reckoner Bankbuster, this one's interesting. I wanted another card drawing card against like black-red mid-range decks that I could also use against blue-white control. I settled on the Bankbuster over like Memory Deluge or, you know, more Planeswalkers or, you know, some other like 4-mana card drawing spell because I just wanted it to be a cheap card. Especially if I'm going to be boarding it against blue-white control, having it be a cheap card is actually pretty important because you want some things you can do proactively when you play a control mirror. You want some things you can do if your opponent is tapping out aggressively, you know, something you can put into play that's really going to give you an advantage. One interesting thing, I chose this over Maze Mind Tome because in a really long game you can divide by 0 this back to your hand and pull cards off of it again. I only had room in my sideboard for one Sheoldred. This is a card where I think if I had one more sideboard slot, or if I was going to cut something from my sideboard, it would be for a second Sheoldred. This is mostly just against, you know, aggressive red decks, like a red. There's sometimes people play with like red-green kind of mid-range aggro with a Seeker's Chariot and Reckless Stormseeker. This is a great card there. And they're basically decks where they're going to have a really hard time winning if Sheoldred's in play. I also tend to board this in against the Cat Oven decks because my plan against Cat Oven decks is to get a Meathook Massacre into play, which kind of stops their Cat Oven combo from killing you. It also, but you still need a way to end the game because like the single Cat Oven is going to block a Torrential Gearhulk and they're going to be gaining a point of life a turn. So you're not actually ending the game yet. Sheoldred gives you a way to end the game. It's also just like the life you gain off of this offsets damage from just a Cat Oven looping. So I would also board it in there. I'm probably not going to board it in against blue-white control. I think it's a little bit too clunky, especially against like the Wandering Emperor. One Shadow's Verdict. This is another sweeper that's primarily to deal with Cat Oven decks because you get rid of all of their cats. It's a pretty big deal. You can also board it in, you know, against creature decks. I wouldn't board it in against like blue-white spirits because it's a 5-mana sweeper. It's too expensive. But in matchups where you're not worried about your sweeper getting countered and you really want sweepers, it's fine. Third Meathook Massacre, primarily for Cat Oven, but also obviously against any sort of you know, deck where you want sweepers, where you want to increase your life total. It's really nice to have so many black cards that are really strong at gaining life that you can play. So I've got 3 Meathooks and a Sheoldred, and also Cling to Dust, honestly, because one of the weaknesses of blue-black control versus blue-white control typically is that you struggle against like burn or, you know, some sort of super aggressive decks because you just don't have good ways to gain life once you stabilize, but this deck you actually do. So that was a really long explanation. But I think people like it when I go into more detail about the card choices, especially when I put a lot of thought into this deck. I don't know that I'm going to say that this is like the best possible choice, but of decks that I enjoy playing, I think it is actually pretty strong. So let's jam it through a qualifier. For people who don't know, these qualifier play-in tournaments, you can enter them with either gold, gems, or the qualifier play-in points, which you get from playing in the events. I actually intentionally don't try to get top 250 on the ladder because I like playing in these events. It may seem kind of weird that I kept a 1-land hand in a control deck, but I've got a cycling card, and this is effectively a cycling card. I actually think that this is a pretty good hand to just not mulligan. I think I'm going to want to Sheoldred's Edict non-token creatures when they play the Lovestruck Beast. My opponent also mulled to 5. So I'm kind of assuming they're not going to have a ton here. If they don't have a third land and don't do anything, I'm going to Cling to Dust my own Censor. Sometimes you could make them sack the token creature here, but they have a Lair of the Hydra, which would enable them to be able to let the Lovestruck Beast attack anyway. All right, I got a little bit, well, maybe not unlucky that I didn't find a third land, but it's unfortunate that I didn't find a third land, so could be in trouble. If they had had a Karn that turn, it would have been real bad for me. They didn't do anything and didn't hit me with the Lair of the Hydra, so I think they just missed 2 damage. If they don't cast a pretty good spell this turn, I'm going to be in great shape. Even if they cast a good spell, I'm going to divide by 0 it. Wolf of Haven does not count as a pretty good spell. So I'm going to start out by clinging my own Censor. I'm definitely going to do this turn. I'm going to also play Behold the Multiverse, but I want to see what card I get off of the cling. I'm going to, I guess, have to discard the hand size. Could just Fatal Push the token rather than discarding the hand size. I think that's actually what I'm going to do. The token's a little bit annoying because I eventually want to play Narset. Because I'm playing with Torrential Gearhulk, it is important to think about what cards I'm leaving in my graveyard if I'm clinging my own spells or I'm escaping cling. So obviously, I think it's better to have a Sheoldred's Edict in my graveyard for later than to have a Censor. Because by the time I'm actually casting that, it's going to be really far into the future. They only have 1 card in their yard, so I'm very, very far away from being able to divide by 0. Or to drown in the Loch something. This is a little bit unfortunate. I will get... I think I'll get Confront the Past. I'm not expecting them to be able to kill my Narset, but they're a deck that's kind of likely to get a Planeswalker into play, so... We'll go ahead and get prepared for that. I guess that once the Cavalier of Thorns resolves, actually the Drowned in the Loch will be pretty strong. It's up to 5 already. See, this is a spot where I kind of want to demo field the Lair of the Hydra, but I won't be able to Fatal Push the Lenorels because I've already got both my swamps out. What to do? How much mana do they have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of the Lair of the Hydra. In this matchup, a lot of the times you have the option of Field of Ruining their Nykthoses. I think it's generally a mistake. The games you win are going to wind up taking a long time anyway, so they're very likely to draw multiple Nykthoses over the course of the game. What are they getting back if I... Drown in the Loch? don't know that that's going to be a very useful card, but I have plenty of card drawing. I'm going to let them kill the Narset if they want. If they want to deal damage to me, I'm also going to let them do that. I'm going to play Torrential Gearhulk in some form this turn. If they cast a big spell, I will Torrential Gearhulk divide by 0 it probably. If they don't, I'll Torrential Gearhulk, and I think I've got a Behold the Multiverse down here. I guess I could also Torrential Gearhulk and Sheoldred's Edict them. That might be the best play. Just going to divide by 0 that again. This is one of the matchups where divide by 0 is pretty nice. As you can see, this is a game where obviously I'm never going to be able to get Teachings of Archaics to work. Should I just kill this? What are they going to get back? Nothing all that good. Guess there's no need to do it right this second. I suppose by doing this, though, I think I'm also going to play Narset this turn. So I'm forcing them to make a decision before they know what the rest of my turn is going to be. I don't think it's really possible for them to get out of this, so it doesn't really matter. They're getting back their Lair of the Hydra. Okay. It's an okay choice, I would say, but I don't think it's going to get it done for them. Do I have both my islands? I do. So if I ever use this Field of Ruin, I'm just going to be down a land. A little bit sad, but I've got enough lands to function. So that's something I can afford to do if I need to. I'll just take Sheoldred's Edict, I guess. I can cling that out of their graveyard. Divide by 0 is also very good against people who are flashing back spells. I think I'll save the divide by 0 in case they have something else expensive that they want to do. So you can always safely remove your lessons from your graveyard and your lands. Also, this is a matchup where I do not think I'm ever going to want to flashback Fatal Push. Should definitely leave Negate. I guess I can take one of my divide by 0s because I already have another one in my hand. I've got 3 of my 4 lessons already, so I'm really not very interested in dividing by 0 more things. This mono-green matchup was one of the ones that I didn't really like the blue-white matchup when I was playing against mono-green. Sure. I thought that the games when you were on the draw with blue-white, if they just started on a Llanowar Elf, it was oftentimes pretty hard to win. Certainly don't care about that thing dying, so... Question is, do I want to Edict the Nissa? Do I want to confront it? I think it doesn't matter. I'll just play my spell. I also could have edicted their land. I don't know that that was really particularly exciting. I might just play Meathook Massacre on their land this turn. I have wound up in a spot where I guess if they somehow manage to chain storm the festivals together next turn, they could maybe get back in the game. I don't really think that's very likely to happen, but I guess they got a shot. If their deck is perfectly stacked, maybe something good can happen for them. Now look at the first storm the festival. They can't go too crazy though, because they don't have enough loyalty that if they had hit Nykthos there, it would have done anything. So they're dead if I find any removal spell. Because I can Field of Ruin, the Lair of the Hydra, kill the Llanowar Elves with the removal spell. And then hit him with Torrential Gearhulk. Certainly this is not a good spot for them to animate this thing and attack me with it. Just going to take the damage. Those are not the things that save me. Or that win me the game. Come on, something good. I've done it. In this matchup, I definitely want Negate. Beyond that, there's nothing that's like, you have to play it. So what don't I love? Narset is not insane. I mean, it was good that game, but it does not help you in the games where they have better hands. I think I might just do that. The Cling to Dusts are nice to be able to pick off Storm the Festivals. And it basically never hurts you to have one Cling to Dust in your deck. You're always going to be able to find a spot to cycle it. This is one, I could shave one of those, but I do want to hit Storm the Festival with it. The Meathook Massacre, I really like having a sweeper I can play on turn 3 and kill their Llanowar Elves, especially if they've played multiple Llanowar Elves by that point in the game. Yeah, I think I'm just going to go with that. Thoughtseize wouldn't be crazy to have in my deck, but I think I like everything. If you've been watching my videos, you know that this is the wrong Llanowar Elves art. The opponent 100% blew it. It's like a disastrously bad. Getting a little bit aggressive there, opponent. So they have access to 5 mana if I leave the Kiora. This is one of those spots where it's a bit of a guessing game. Like, if they have a way to play around Censor like they have Karn, I'm probably going to lose. But I think I lose most of the time they have Karn anyway. But here, this works out great. Get censored. Then I'm going to play the Fatal Push. Edict their Planeswalker. So now, if they actually go land Karn and they had it in their hand, I think they messed up the turn before. They didn't have a Karn, which is nice for me. So I want more black mana. Could still lose if they have a good play this turn. Like if they played Nissa this turn, it would be probably lights out. If they played two more of the wrong artwork Llanowar Elves, it is not lights out. I will be playing this Meathook Massacre on the Llanowar Elves, but I want to see if I can hold it until after I played this Hieroglyphic Illumination. If they play Storm the Festival, I'll divide by 0 it, and then probably just Meathook Massacre. If they play Karn. I think I'm going to let that happen. They'll probably get that stupid 6-mana artifact. I got Tormod's Crypt. Okay. I accept. Did they know something I didn't know about the Tormod's Crypt? Doesn't really matter. They're gonna probably go and get the stupid artifact this turn. I might want to play Torrential Gearhulk. We'll have to see what they actually choose to do. I think it wouldn't be bad if I went Torrential Gearhulk, force them to use the Tormod's Crypt, and then untap Meathook Massacre, then Llanowar Elves kill the Karn. That would be fine. That's really not that scary. I guess I'll eat an elf for free. This way I'm not forced to Meathook Massacre next turn, or, well, I don't know, that was forced anyway, but this way I can hold off on the Meathook Massacre. People love doing this in sideboarded games against Torrential Gearhulk decks where they try to go after your graveyard, but they've almost always boarded in a way that just like a 5/6 flash creature is a huge problem for them anyway. Kill Karn while I can. Then I've access to a very fast clock. Guess I'll foretell this. Seems kind of hard to imagine that I'm not going to wind up casting it. But maybe I want to play Divide by Zero and Cling to Dust. fine. They can fizzle my Divide by Zero if they want with the Staff of Completion. But I think that's not a big deal for me. I think I don't even need to play the Divide by Zero this turn. Definitely want the Fatal Push. I think I want the Narset. 6 cards. What are the middle abilities? Add a mana? Proliferate, so kind of nothing. Oh, I can cling this? Guess I'll do that. I'm down a card, but they were basically guaranteed to get the 4/4 this game, so it's like I just turned a card in my hand into a Fatal Push effectively, which the Fatal Push that's in my hand is destined to hit that layer of the Hydra, so I do need the Fatal Push. Is it even worth massacring the 1 Llanowar elf? I don't think so. We're getting to the point where the Hall of Storm Giants are pretty scary for the opponent. I should have Fatal Pushed the Llanowar Elves. Did not allow them to chump. I was thinking that they can't win no matter what they do, so it doesn't really matter. But I was thinking as long as I have the Drowned in the Loch as a counter, they can't win. Like, through Drowned in the Loch, Divide by Zero. But I think I could have just cast my spells and they would have died. Alright, 1 match down. Get to be on the play with a Censor in my opening hand? Wow. I'm certainly going to start with one of these Fetid Pools. If I don't Censor anything on turn 2, I'll cycle the other one, I think. My opponent is playing with the Energons. That is unexpected. They seem to really mean it, too. Scrapyard Mutt. I want to censor that. I don't think so. I don't really know what my opponent's deck is. Oh, okay. I think it's just a Greasefang deck. That's playing with Energons for some reason. I maybe should have just cycled the Fetid Pools instead of killing the Scrapyard Mutt. Sheoldred's Edict's a little bit awkward in this matchup just because they have like these useless guys that you have to edict through. It's kind of miserable. All right, I think I need to cling. This can't stay away. Do I? I think I should start by cycling, actually. No, I think I'll cling this can't stay away just to use my mana. Three cards in the yard. This is a matchup where if I can, I'm going to hold the Fabled Passage to potentially set up a Fabled Passage Fatal Push on a Greasefang at some point. This is the last turn I'm going to hold the Censor. Why do they have all these Ether Hubs? The deck can't possibly spend energy on anything other than Ether Hub, right? Whoa, it's a Neoform deck. Weird. I would assume they're just trying to get Greasefang. I don't know. This seems like about as good as Negate's going to get, though. Maybe that's why they have Ether Hubs. Like, they're a white... They're like too many colors, essentially. So they have to play a 4-colored land. I would think Mana Confluence is better for what they're doing, but maybe they don't have those. I messed up. I should have played the Fabled Passage that turn. It would give me enough cards to be able to cling to dust. Not that I necessarily want to do that turn, because I am going to be playing Torrential Gearhulk the next turn. But I could have given myself the option for no cost, so I should have. Witherbloom Command, sure. More Energons for them. Are they going to spend an Energon Scrapyard Mudding? No. I think I'll just take the hit. Ideally, they play something for me to negate here. All right, now that I have 2 Gearhulks, I will actually just run one out and start getting a clock going on. Greasefang. One thing that, I don't know if I said this in the intro, one thing that's nice about playing with Demolition Fields is some decks just don't have basic lands in them, or they only have one, so you do occasionally just get to knock people off of colored mana. There's just probably a deck where I can do that if I want. I don't know that it's the way I want to approach this game, but... They're out of Energons. I guess I'll knock them off with white mana. I'm going to have 6 mana after I do this, assuming I'm willing to sack Fabled Passage, which I am, and I have 2 basics left in my deck, so I'm not going to run out. Wonder what kind of blue cards they're going to board in. They might have Spell Pierce type cards. Censors. We're past the point of censoring doing anything. Pretty sure they have enough vehicles down here that I don't want to just randomly cling one. Okay. So against Greasefang, I want my Thoughtseizes, I want Ray of Enfeeblement. Negate's pretty good too. Even if they're not playing Neoform, just like negating a Seeker's Chariot's a pretty good play. What don't I want? Narset, you don't really want to be playing at sorcery speed. And Meathook Massacre, I don't think you want. Sheoldred's Edict is, as we saw that game, not stellar. But it can be good sometimes. I think I'm going to play like one Meathook Massacre and 2 Edicts. The Meathook Massacre can give me a way to come back in case they get in the Seeker's Chariot into play. It might be... Sheoldred's Edict is so good against the people who have Planeswalkers in their deck, but it might be nice to play like one Heartless Act over one of the Sheoldred's Edicts. This is another one of those matchups where Drowned in the Loch is great because my opponent is going out of their way to feed the Drowned in the Loch, which works out really nice. If they have a perfect draw, they're gonna run me over. Like if they go Ravines Informant, discard Parhelion number 2, Greasefang, it's gonna be bad. Alright, I drew a card that prevents them from having the perfect draw, which is really nice. I think I don't want to reveal my hand to them. Might not have been crazy to let that resolve. Turns out it didn't matter what I did. They have Mana Confluence in addition to Ether Hub. Interesting. All right. They know about the Censor, so I don't think there's any chance it's getting anything. Even if I know that they're not getting a land here, I don't think it's worth Field of Ruining them, because me top decking Fatal Push it's a pretty big deal. None of these are particularly good though. Guess we'll just get Environmental Sciences. I didn't want to Drown in the Loch that, because if they can't stay away, it would have been real bad for me. The other thing about trying to cut off people with Field of Ruin is it just doesn't work, once they've drawn enough lands. Even had I Field of Ruined them on turn 4, they would still be able to cast their spells. I would maybe be preventing them from having access to 2 spells in a turn. They're getting charged up. Hopefully they don't have a way to get cards out of their graveyard at instant speed. That would make me sad. It's nice if I have enough resources to just slow roll the Cling to Dust, but I think I would need to draw some more spells. Wonder what they got. We may never know. Should I continue to take the hit? Definitely going to take the hit now. I have a swamp left as my last land. So now I have all 4 basics in play. I drew a lot of basics this game. I think the worst thing that can happen to me here is that they cast Asika's Chariot. It's also possible they have, some way to kill my land, which that's fine. Cut them down to 9. Meathook Massacre would be pretty nice, huh? They didn't discard anything? It's a little scary. Those are not going to help me. Well, Thoughtsei's not a good one here. So I guess I just need the Meathook Massacre. That was kind of a sad game to lose, but turn 2, 3 power that you just ignore the whole game does eventually kill you. My thoughts, they've been seized. I know that they know about the Censor, so it might be tempting to just foretell the Behold the Multiverse, but I'm spending my mana anyway, and this way they can't realistically cast something on turn 2, because it would just get censored. So just by leaving my mana up, I'm forcing them to play off curve. And they'll have to play off curve again this turn, and I'll just cycle the Censor. They whiffed with Witherbloom command. Nice. It wasn't a full whiff because they did get a equipment or a vehicle in the yard. So if they just play Greasefang here, I lose. Well, I don't lose, but it's bad. Graveyard Trespasser, sure. Those are some good ones. Thank you, Raven Feeblement. You've saved me. Day has turned to night. Okay. I like my opponent's deck. It does a lot of damage to itself. I always think that's a sign of a pretty good deck if you're dealing yourself a lot of damage. Maybe it wasn't worth playing the Gearhulk before they resolved the trigger. No, I didn't want them to draw into a card that could counter the Gearhulk, but I did kind of let them know that they should hold on to a removal spell if they had it. I think I'm going to beginning of combat drown in the Loch the Raffine. They've taken so much damage from their lands that if they take another crack from this Torrential Gearhulk, they're actually not going to have very good access to colored mana for the rest of the game. Mana Confluence, it's not free. Oh, boo. No Takenuma for me. I'm just going to Takenuma this turn. Hope to get lucky. If not, I'm getting a card out of my hand. Three Gearhulks, two Narsets. I think I still have two Narsets in my deck. Oh, I hit a Gearhulk. I did get lucky. Did I feed anything else good to the Gearhulk? I didn't hit any card drawing. I'm still just going to jam this Gearhulk because it would kill them. I'm not scared about them just playing a... Oh, what's it called? Greasefang, because I have access to Fatal Push, Field of Ruin. Although I didn't check to make sure I still have a Swamp in my deck, but I do. I didn't draw that many basics this game. They're really vanishing versed a lot of things. That was an interesting match. I'm up against a Gigantha gamer. Gigantha, there's a wide variety of decks that played Gigantha. Might just be like one of the red-black decks, though. Doesn't really matter. I'm going to keep this hand. I could be in trouble if they have like a turn 2 Blood Tithe Harvester. But mulling against the black decks, against Slutsies decks in this format is so miserable. All right, so this is some sort of probably red-green beatdown deck. Could be like a 3-color combo deck as well. Probably not with Lair of the Hydra in their deck, though. What are they doing with their mana? Why didn't they attack me? Sometimes it's not worth doing that, but I don't think I'm getting any value out of the Censor, and I am worried that they're just going to run away with this game. All right, Seeker's Chariot. Not good. Not good at all for me. If this was a Heartless Act, I would feel a little bit more hopeful. Probably this one is Dunzo. My one hope is if I can play Meathook Massacre next turn. So my plan is to just take this giant hit. I'm going to Field of Ruin the Lair of the Hydra to thin my deck of my island, then cycle the Censor, and that gives me 2 draws out of 49 to hit Meathook Massacre. And honestly, like, even if that happens, it's not clear that I'm going to win. They're still going to be hitting me for a minimum of 4 damage with the Seeker's Chariot. Otawara, not going to save me. That was rough. That was rough indeed. All right, so this is the matchup I wanted Sheoldred for, or one of them. I think Shadow's Verdict's also fine here. Meathook Massacre's good. Cut Down's obviously pretty good. I don't think I want Ray of Enfeeblement against just their Llanowar Elves and like their Lovestruck Beast token. I'm going to take out my Negate and my Narset. And I think I Cling to Dust. A little bit soft with Seeker's Chariot, but that's just the way that my deck is. I don't want to have Negate in my deck against them. They do have the Chariots and they have the Adventure creatures, but it's like planning to negate the 1-mana part of the Lovestruck Beast seems dubious at best. And as we saw that game, like negating the Stomp or censoring the Stomp, it's not a play you want to be making. I don't regret having censored the Stomp. I was taking a gamble that their hand wasn't very good. It turned out that their hand was very good. So my gamble didn't pay off. But given the cards in my hand, there was no way I was going to win that game. There's a thing called black mana that I'm missing. I will eventually get it off the Divide by Zero on the Field of Ruin. I do not wish to have my maze crushed. No, thank you. I am just going to cut down this Mystic. Maybe it buys me enough time that I can get the Meathook Massacre up to 4. If not, I'm just going to Sheoldred's Edict. Sure. It's looking okay. They could very easily have an Asika's Chariot this turn. And they do. I think my life title is high enough that I can let them have the Chariot unimpeded for a turn. They'll probably be tempted to add something to the board. Also, if I draw an untapped land, so I can just start threatening to block with the Hall of Storm Giants, I can actually just stall the game out and get full value off these Meathooks. Ow. think I'm just going to play Mascot Exhibition. I'm assuming they don't have Embercleaves in their deck. If I don't die this turn, I'm feeling okay. That's fine, I guess. It's only 4 damage. So I'm up to 8. I get to kill Luca. Then I'm going to go back down to 4, if not lower. Chariot's rough. It is rough. It would have been so nice to have drawn an instant at some point this game. This feels like they have Lightning Strike, doesn't it? That or Embercleave? I don't think I can beat Embercleave. So I think I should just Fatal Push pre-combat. Yeah. All right, I'm going to be able to Field of Ruin, the Lair of the Hydra, and then Edict the Chariot. Well, not if they're doing that. They might sack the Chariot here just because if they don't, I can just animate the Hall of Storm Giants and attack them, and then they're actually in kind of a rough spot. because there's no one card they can draw that gets them out of just dying to back Hall of Storm Giants hits. Attacking with the Hall of Storm Giants is pretty tempting there. Let's see if they're just going to attack into me. Probably not. That was a tough game. Do I maybe actually want Negate in my deck? Chariot is so brutal. What else? I saw Lightning Strikes and Luca. I guess I should have some Negates in my deck. I'll play one. Shadow's Verdict is quite expensive on the draw. Come on, no Llanowar Elves. It's Elvish Mystic. I should have I called the wrong shot. Please don't play Reckless Stormseeker. Okay. That's not good for me, but I feel like I've got some hope still. Clothis is annoying, but it's honestly not that scary. Oh, I played the wrong land. Damn it. Needed to play a swamp. Probably lost the game because of that. Like otherwise I could have potentially drowned in the Loch, the Elvish Mystic, and kept them from attacking me. Taking 6 damage I didn't need to take. That sucks. I think I would have died to the Chariot probably anyway. Yeah. I would have died anyway, but I definitely took 6 damage I shouldn't have taken. Alright. That's a hard match on the draw. Well, that's going to be it for this video. I think it's been long enough. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I do think this deck's pretty good. I'll probably try at least one more time with it off camera, and if I make it into the Arena Open, I'll make a video about that. So thanks for watching. See you next time.